Well, hello everyone. It's time for our midweek study, which is going to start the book of Galatians. And we just finished 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and I thought another letter from Paul to the churches would be good to go into. So we'll start out today with an introduction to Galatians and then start into chapter 1 next week. So, the author of this book is Paul. Everybody's in agreement with that. And a little bit of background behind this. During his first missionary journey, which is around 46 to 48 AD, Paul, together with Barnabas, had the opportunity to establish several churches in the Roman province of Galatia. On his second trip, Paul and Silas visited them again. But it wasn't long, however, before some Jewish Christians came in and began teaching the Gentile Christians needed to be circumcised and keep the law of Moses, similar to what happened at Antioch of Syria. So, in an effort to persuade the Galatians, it appears the tactic was to discredit Paul as an apostle, challenge his concept of the gospel of Christ, and charge his doctrine with leading to loose living. Sound familiar? There's always somebody trying to change the way that it was written. Okay, so the time and place of this writing, well, there's two different stories on it. If they were in North Galatia, then it would have been around after it's probably 57, 58 AD. But if it was in South Galatia, where most people think these churches were, it was more around AD 55. And I think that's where most of the thought process was as to when it was actually written, as AD 55. So, and the purpose of this epistle. The churches in Galatia were being influenced by those who would pervert the gospel of Christ. Known as Judaizing teachers, these individuals taught that Gentile Christians needed to be circumcised and keep the law of Moses. Paul recognized that this doctrine would jeopardize the salvation of those souls who accepted it. Because of the enemies of the true gospel were trying to support their cause by undermining Paul's authority as an apostle of Christ, it was necessary to verify that he was truly an apostle, not from man nor through man, but through Jesus Christ and God the Father. Therefore, Paul writes to verify his apostleship and the gospel of justification by faith in Christ. Because of this outstanding defense of the gospel of Christ, in which we have the freedom from sin and law, this epistle has frequently been called the Magna Carta of Christian liberty, which is a good title for it because it gives us a lot of the standards and values that we live by. The key verse in this entire book or letter is really Galatians 5:1, where he says, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free, and do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage." Be in the world, but not of the world. That's an issue that we're still fighting today. So, I'm going to give you a quick outline. And it starts out as the introduction, and it's salutation 1 through 5. Reason for the letter was 6 through 10. Paul's defense of his apostleship. Then it goes into the divine origins of his gospel. The thesis, his gospel received directly from God. His pre-Christian years and the conversion. His relationship to other apostles. His first visit with Peter in the early years as a Christian. The council at Jerusalem, his sanction by James, Cephas, and John, his rebuke of Peter at Antioch, Peter's hypocrisy, his speech to Peter, how we are justified by the faith in Christ, and then a liberty with a sense of responsibility for helping those who with burdens, for doing good to all, thus sowing to the Spirit, and finally the conclusion where the final rebuke to those who would bind circumcision, and Paul's confidence in the cross of Jesus, and then benediction. So, let's go through a few questions and answers. on the introduction, and then next week we'll start into chapter 1 and go on a verse by verse study and get as much out of this letter as we can, which is very valuable for us today because the things they faced are the same things we face today. So, question number 1. According to the South Galatian theory, on which journey did Paul establish the churches in Galatia? And that would have been in AD 55 after his first journey, and that would have been in that area in AD 55. Where does one read about the establishment of these churches? It's actually in Acts 13, verses 14 through chapter 14, verse 23. What are some of the cities in which these churches were located? Well, they were in Derbe, Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch of Pisidia. Number 4, among the other possibilities for the place of this writing in the time of the epistle, which one seems likely because of Paul's extended stay at that place? And that would be Ephesus on his third missionary journey, AD 55, as we stated earlier. Okay, number 5. What 2 things were required of the Gentile Christians that jeopardized their salvation? Well, the first thing was circumcision, where they said circumcision is a requirement, which was for Hebrews, but not for Christians. Second was the observance of the law of Moses. Remember, Jesus put away the old law. It's now the new law, we have a brand new set of rules, and the old is put away. Number 6, what 3 tactics appear to have been used by Judaizing teachers? First tactic was to discredit Paul as an apostle. Second was challenge his concept of the gospel of Christ. And third, to charge his doctrine with leading to loose living. I don't know how they got that one, but they managed to pull that out. Number 7, what is Paul's purpose in writing this epistle? His purpose is to verify of his apostleship and the gospel of justification by the faith in Christ, getting him back to what he had taught. Number 8, what has the epistle to the Galatians frequently been called? And remember, we said it was the Magna Carta of Christian liberty. Okay, number 9, which verse in the book stands out as the key verse? And remember, I told you that early, and it's Galatians 5:1, where it is the first key verse in the Bible. So that is the introduction for Galatians. We'll get into chapter 1 next week. This study of Galatians is going to be very beneficial because it tells us a lot of the values as Christians that we need to hold fast to. And it tells you some of the things that they were challenged with, and today we still need to question what we hear. We need to question where it came from. We need to question where the source of it is. There's a lot of things that are done by Christians today that have no scriptural backing whatsoever. They may be good things to do. I'm not arguing that point whatsoever. They may be nice and productive and all kinds of things, but if they're not scripturally found, they're not a requirement for salvation and living forever in heaven. We should all be good people. We should all do good things, but just about everything we need to do, in fact, everything we do need to do to make it to heaven, is found in the New Testament. So if you're told that you need to do something to go to heaven that's not found in the New Testament, it's wrong. Just like these Judaizing teachers were telling them, well, Hebrews had to be circumcised as a child, and if you were uncircumcised, you could not become a Jew. Well, We're not Jewish. We're Christians. Christ never preached that circumcision was necessary. And they also said we had to follow the law of Moses. Christ said the old law was put away. We have a new agreement. We have a new set of rules to live by. And he preached on them, and the apostles following him through divine revelation continued to make sure that we know everything we need to know to be successful as Christians. So I look forward to this study. I look forward to seeing you next week. I hope you all have a good evening and a good rest of the week, and we'll get together next week for the first chapter of Galatians. Bless you.